The karma contingency. Ellie Hayes's quadruple rebuttal the day I arrived with backup. Did you really think I wouldn't come? The words hung in the air, slicing through the polite chatter of the garden party. I watched the color drain from my ex-husband's face as his heavily pregnant wife clutched his arm, looking like a deer caught in the headlights. This was the man who had thrown divorce papers at me 2 years ago, calling me defective merchandise because I couldn't give him a child. Now, he was frozen, as 4 small children tumbled out of a white Lamborghini behind me. You know what they say about karma. It doesn't just come back. It comes back in style. And sometimes, it brings reinforcements. This is the story of how I went from begging doctors to fix my broken body, to watching my ex-husband's world unravel as my 4 toddlers, each bearing the Herrera surname, charged towards the swing set at his precious baby shower. The broken blueprint. For 8 years, I was Eleanor Vance, desperately trying to be the perfect wife for a man who saw me only as a broken incubator. My story with Alexander Vance began like a screenplay in London in 2019. I was 20 for a bridesmaid, he a groomsman, a clumsy spill of champagne, and suddenly, I was in a fairy tale. He was stable, ambitious in finance, and talked endlessly of a large family. We married on a beach in the Maldives. I believed every word of his vows. The fairy tale curdled 6 months after the honeymoon. Our attempts to conceive became mechanical, joyless, and entirely scheduled. The monthly disappointment in Alexander's eyes was crushing. He insisted on endless, invasive fertility tests for me, while his mother made pointed comments about waiting for grandchildren. The breaking point arrived in November 2023. While I was injecting another round of hormones, Alexander walked in. "We need to talk about other options," he said, suggesting we take a break. He wasn't talking about pausing the baby attempts. He was talking about separating. The fight was brutal. "You made me feel like a failure every month," I screamed. "You turned our relationship into a fertility clinic," he retorted, then let slip the quiet part. "Perhaps that's what you became." The cruelty was astonishing. Then came the coup de grace. "Perhaps you were enough for who I was back then, but I've grown, and maybe we aren't compatible anymore." The engineered exit. Alexander moved out swiftly. Within 3 weeks, his mother called, pitying me for being too emotional and asking for the divorce. Alexander was controlling the narrative, painting me as the emotionally unstable wife who couldn't handle the fertility stress. 2 months into the separation, I received a notification from our insurance company about a consultation Alexander had had with a urologist. I called him instantly. "The results showed some issues on my side," he mumbled. "Low sperm count, motility problems." "Alexander, this changes everything. It means it's not my fault." "No, Ellie, it changes nothing. I don't want to do IVF. I want to accept that perhaps we aren't meant to have children together." Then came the final, soul-crushing blow. "I've been seeing someone. Her name is Victoria. She already has children." The sheer audacity was breathtaking. He wouldn't undergo fertility treatment with me, but he was perfectly happy to date a woman who came with pre-made children. He had used our infertility as an excuse to trade me in for someone more convenient. The public humiliation invitation. The divorce papers arrived 3 days later, leaving me with a meager settlement. Alexander kept the house, the savings, and demanded the return of my engagement ring. His cruelty continued during mediation. "You should have thought about that before you let our marriage fall apart." The ultimate insult came weeks later when Alexander called with a saccharine voice. "Victoria is pregnant. We're having a baby shower next month. Victoria thought it would be adult to invite you. It would be good for you. Show everyone you're moving on, that you're not bitter." He wanted me there as a prop, a confirmation of his version of the story. I drove past the house and overheard his conversation with Victoria. "My mother is asking too many questions. Ellie showing up looking pathetic will answer them all without me having to say a word. She's too pathetic not to come. She'll look like the bitter, childless woman who couldn't handle that I moved on and found happiness. If she makes a scene, even better. It justifies everything I've told them. He had invited me for public humiliation. The truth revealed on the morning of the baby shower. My phone rang. It was Dr. Martinez from the fertility clinic. "Ms. Hayes, I'm following up on your recent full fertility panel. The results show exceptional ovarian reserve, perfect hormonal levels, and no indicators of fertility issues. In fact, your markers are exceptional for your age." I hung up, reeling. Alexander had secretly ordered tests, discovered I was perfectly fertile, and concealed the results while filing for divorce. He had deliberately sabotaged our attempts and made me believe I was the defective one. I called my sister Laura. He made everyone believe our marriage failed because of my fertility problems, then left me for someone who already had kids so he could be an instant father. It's diabolical. But in that moment, the pain turned into power. Alexander thought he was inviting his broken ex-wife to be humiliated. He was actually inviting someone who could destroy his entire, carefully constructed narrative. The Phoenix Rises, my first call was for my medical records. The second was to a lawyer. The third was to Laura. "I need you to help me disappear for 18 months. I moved to California, enrolled in business school, and entered intense therapy to undo the psychological damage. I learned about gaslighting and emotional abuse. I realized everything Alexander told me was a lie. I wasn't unstable. I was passionate. I wasn't broken. I was betrayed. 6 months later, I met Mateo Herrera at a tech conference. He was smart, kind, and saw me as a whole person. We fell in love while building a consultancy, Herrera Solutions, together. When we decided to start a family, I conceived immediately. The ultrasound showed twins. The next one revealed quadruplets. 4 babies. Mateo chuckled, kissing me. Our own little football team, Emma, James, Lucia, and Miguel Herrera arrived, healthy and perfect. Mateo was the one who spotted Alexander's second baby shower invitation, addressed to Ellie Vance, forwarded to our new address. "Are you going?" Mateo asked. "Actually," I said, a dangerous smile spreading across my face. "I think I am. It's time Alexander learns who I really became after he discarded me." The grand entrance, the baby shower, was held at the same exclusive country club where Alexander and I had celebrated our anniversary. I arrived in my white Lamborghini, wearing a bespoke designer dress, radiating confidence. But the real surprise was in the back seat. My 4 18-month-old toddlers, ready to meet their mother's ex-husband. The room fell silent as I entered, carrying Lucia, with Emma, James, and Miguel marching beside me. Alexander's champagne glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. "My God," someone whispered. "Is that Ellie?" "Ellie," Alexander gasped, barely audible. "What are you doing here? You invited me, remember?" My voice was calm. Alexander's mother approached, eyes wide with confusion. "Ellie, dear, whose children are these?" "They are my children, Mrs. Vance. Emma, James, Lucia, and Miguel Herrera." "Herrera!" The word hit Alexander. "Are you married?" gasped Victoria, clutching her belly. "Very happily. Mateo and I celebrated our second anniversary last month. But Alexander said you couldn't have children," Mrs. Vance stammered. "I think Alexander may have misinterpreted some medical information. As you can see, I had no trouble having children once I was with the right partner." Alexander's face cycled through shock, panic, and dawning fury. The crowd started to sense the lie. "It's not complicated at all," I said, pulling out my phone. Dr. Martinez from the fertility clinic helped me understand exactly what happened. Alexander's eyes widened with panic. "Ellie, no!" "No what, Alexander? Not to tell the truth? Not to share the medical records you concealed from me? The results showed I have exceptional fertility, but Alexander never told me. Instead, He used our fertility struggles to justify ending our marriage. The silence in the room was deafening. He let me believe for 3 years that my body was broken. He watched me inject hormones and blame myself, knowing all along there was nothing wrong with me. Victoria looked at her partner with dawning horror. "You told me she couldn't handle that you found happiness," she whispered. "But look at her, Alexander. Does she look like someone who can't handle your happiness?" Matteo chose that moment to enter. Tall, handsome, and clearly devoted, he gently kissed me and scooped Miguel into his arms. "Hope I haven't interrupted anything important," he said, smiling at his wife. "Just introducing our children to some old friends," I replied, looking at Alexander for the last time. "Alexander," I said, my voice ringing with finality, "thank you. Thank you for showing me I deserved better. Thank you for forcing me to rebuild my life so I could discover how strong I really was. And thank you for inviting me to your baby shower so I could show everyone who I truly became after you discarded me." Alexander's carefully constructed life lay in pieces at his feet. As Matteo and I settled our children back into their car seats, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. Alexander had spent so much energy trying to destroy me. He never realized he was actually setting me free. Meaningful ending. The irrelevance of the past. In the subsequent years, Alexander Vance's life quickly unraveled. Victoria left him swiftly, leaving a note. "I cannot have a child with a man who builds his happiness on the destruction of another person." Alexander's reputation was ruined. He lost his job, and his family disowned him. Meanwhile, my life with Matteo and our quadruplets flourished. Our firm, Herrera Solutions, became a success. And our foundation, the Phoenix Wing, provided grants to women rebuilding their lives after abuse. I rarely thought of Alexander. He had become an old chapter in a book I seldom revisited. 2 years after the infamous baby shower, I received a desperate email from him, begging for forgiveness. "I saw you on the cover of a business magazine last week," he wrote. "You looked so happy. You deserve everything." I read the email, but felt neither satisfaction nor anger. I felt nothing. That indifference was the definitive sign that I was truly free. I didn't respond. Instead, I doubled my personal contribution to the Phoenix Wing Foundation that day. 15 years later, I sit in my home in Marin County, California, watching my 4 beautiful, confident teenagers laugh. My true victory was not the confrontation at that party. It was every day since. The truest form of revenge is a life so full, so happy, and so free that the existence of your former abuser becomes utterly irrelevant. Alexander thought he was ending my story when he handed me those divorce papers. He was wrong. He was simply signing the foreword to my magnificent next chapter. Chapter extension: The Irrelevance of Alexander Vance. 5 years post-showdown. The echo fades. The years that followed the infamous baby shower established a clear bifurcation of destinies. While Ellie Herrera, née Hayes' life, was a vibrant tapestry of professional success, family milestones, and profound personal growth, Alexander Vance's world was a monument to his own self-inflicted destruction. 5 years after the public exposure, the whispers about Alexander had largely faded from the high society circles of London, not because he was forgiven, but because he was simply irrelevant. He had become a cautionary tale, whispered between junior partners at hedge funds. Alexander had managed to hold on to a low-level sales job outside of finance, living in a modest flat in an outer borough. The man who once commanded boardrooms now spent his days answering client service calls. His son with Victoria, Leo, was a difficult variable. Victoria had ultimately cut off all contact, forcing supervised visits through a strict legal agreement that ensured Alexander had no control or financial leverage. The accidental encounter. One cold Tuesday afternoon, Ellie was in San Francisco for a major fundraising gala for the Phoenix Wing. She had a few hours to spare before her flight back to Marin County and decided to grab a coffee near the financial district. As she entered a small, independent coffee shop, the bell above the door chimed, and she froze. Standing by the counter, waiting for his order, was Alexander. He looked significantly older than his 53 years. His once impeccably tailored suit was replaced by a worn, slightly stained puffer jacket. His posture was defeated, his eyes hollow. He looked like he was perpetually bracing for impact. He saw her. His eyes widened, not with the old panic or rage, but with a sudden, overwhelming shame. He quickly averted his gaze, his cheeks flushing crimson, and fumbled for his wallet. He was clearly attempting the most primitive form of escape, pretending she didn't exist. Ellie realized she felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no desire for retribution, not even pity. He was simply a man, a stranger, whose presence had zero effect on her pulse or her peace. She walked straight to the counter, stood next to him, and placed her order. "Large Americano, please." Alexander, still refusing to look at her, finally mumbled, "Excuse me," and quickly collected his coffee, practically running for the door. He was gone in a flash, leaving behind a faint scent of cheap cologne and desperation. Ellie watched the door swing shut, the bell chiming his hurried exit. It wasn't until the barista handed her the Americano that she realized Alexander had accidentally left his wallet on the counter. The final act of closure. Ellie looked at the worn leather wallet. It was a tangible piece of the man who had once tried to destroy her. She could have left it. She could have tossed it. But that would be letting him influence her action one last time. She picked it up. Inside, she saw his outdated work ID and a single, faded photo of a young boy, Leo. Walking outside, she pulled out her phone. She didn't call him. She called Victoria. "Victoria, this is Ellie Herrera. I think I have Alexander's wallet. He left it at a cafe downtown." Victoria's voice was sharp, guarded. "Why are you calling me? What do you want, Ellie?" "I want nothing, Victoria. I just want to return it to him. I'm only calling you because I don't have his number, and I need to make sure he gets his ID back for work. I'm leaving it at the front desk of the Hotel St. Giles, in an envelope labeled Alexander Vance. You can let him know." Victoria was silent for a long moment. "Thank you, Ellie." The simplicity of the genuine gratitude was striking. Ellie hung up. She drove straight to the hotel, placed the wallet in a neutral envelope, and handed it to the concierge. The act was swift, purely logistical, and entirely devoid of emotion. Meaningful ending. The definition of freedom. Sitting on the plane, looking out at the glittering lights of San Francisco, Ellie realized the profound significance of that brief, accidental encounter. The true victory was not the grand show at the baby shower. That was mere theater. The real, lasting freedom was defined by that moment in the coffee shop. Alexander Vance had once held the power to shatter her world with a single word. Today, he couldn't even make her heart rate fluctuate. He was no longer a villain, a ghost, or an enemy. He was just a footnote, a faint echo from a past that no longer had any claim on her present. Ellie had not only rebuilt her life, she had transformed her inner self. She had replaced the need for validation with unshakable self-worth, and the desire for revenge with the capacity for radical indifference. Reaching across the aisle, she squeezed Mateo's hand. He was reading a blueprint for a new community center. "Are you all right?" Mateo asked, sensing the slight shift in her energy. "Perfectly all right," Ellie replied, smiling. "I just had a final moment of closure. It turns out I'm completely free." She knew that the best revenge, the kind that lasted, wasn't about the downfall of an enemy. It was about the height of your own soaring, beautiful, irrelevant happiness. and her happiness, surrounded by her loving husband and 4 magnificent children, was boundless. Chapter 7. The Blueprint for a Life. 18 years later. The architect and the artist. It was a crisp California autumn morning. Clara Herrera, now a thoughtful, vibrant 18-year-old, was home from her final year of boarding school in preparation for university applications. The house in Marin County felt charged with unspoken tension, the kind that accompanies major life decisions. Adrian stood in his home office, which overlooked the Golden Gate Bridge. He wasn't focused on the screen, but on the 3 university acceptance letters lying on his desk. One was from Stanford, the other from MIT, and the third was from the Rhode Island School of Design, RISD. Adrian, the former king of control, felt his old instincts rise. Stanford and MIT were calculated, predictable paths to success. RISD was a leap into the unpredictable world of art and design. Clara, the child who had once run away for a few hours to find space, was now debating running away for 4 years to pursue a passion her father didn't fully understand. "I need your honest, unedited opinion, Dad," Clara said, walking in. She was holding a sketch pad filled with intricate architectural drawings, not of buildings, but of fluid, sculptural forms. Adrian took a deep breath. He remembered the promise he made to Sophia and to himself. Presence, not pressure. "My unedited opinion," Adrian began, choosing his words carefully, "is that Stanford and MIT offer an incredible framework for success. They are a guaranteed return on investment." Clara's blue eyes, the eyes that had once stopped his world, met his. "And RISD offers me the chance to design a life, not just a career. I want to build sculptures and concepts, not balance sheets, Dad." The room fell silent. Adrian was looking at his past, and Clara was looking at her future. The interception of Sophia. Later that evening, Adrian paced the kitchen, venting to Sophia, who was calmly preparing dinner. "She has the grades for an Ivy League, Sophia. Why would she choose RISD? That's random. It's risky. What if she doesn't make it? What if she ends up struggling? I spent my life building financial security so she wouldn't have to face that." Sophia stopped chopping vegetables and looked at him. "And you, the CEO of an investment firm, are afraid of risk?" "Adrian, she is choosing the very thing you had to fight for years ago. Authenticity." "It's not the same. I was fighting for survival. She's fighting for paint and clay." "No," Sophia said softly, resting her hand on his arm. "She's fighting for the right to define her own metrics of success. You spent a decade teaching her that love isn't conditional on performance. Don't make her question that now. You can't control her journey. You can only trust the person you raised." The words were a direct echo of the wisdom Sophia had shared years ago, but they hit him harder now because the risk felt more personal. The blueprint for presence. Adrian spent the night staring at Clara's drawings. He saw the passion, the fluidity, and a unique vision that had nothing to do with capital gains or market shares. He saw a creative fire he had deliberately suppressed in his own youth. The next morning, Adrian called a friend, a renowned architect and CEO of a global design firm in New York. He arranged a meeting for Clara. He took Clara to the airport, not to put her on a plane to visit MIT, but to RISD's campus in Rhode Island. "We're going to look at the campus," Adrian said simply. "No pressure, just presence." They walked the RISD grounds, vibrant with artistic energy. Later, they met with the department head, who looked at Clara's portfolio and saw raw, unbridled talent. "Your daughter," the department head told Adrian, "has a mind that sees structure in chaos and beauty in the unconventional. This is not just art. This is innovation." Adrian listened, not as a father terrified of his daughter's risk, but as a businessman finally appreciating the value of unquantifiable potential. Meaningful ending. The uncontrolled success. On the flight back to California, Adrian sat beside Clara, the silence between them comfortable and full of new understanding. "RISD felt right, didn't it, Dad?" Clara asked quietly. Adrian reached over and squeezed her hand. "It felt completely unpredictable," he admitted honestly. "And you know how I feel about predictability." Clara laughed, a genuine, free laugh that reminded him of the sound that had shattered his world 18 years ago. "But," Adrian continued, his voice sincere, "I realized that I spent the last decade building a fortress of security so that you could afford to take risks. If you choose RISD, I will be the most supportive investor in your success. Your metrics of success will be yours alone. My only metric is your happiness." Clara's eyes shimmered. "Thank you, Dad. I didn't want you to just approve. I wanted you to see it." "I see it," Adrian confirmed. "And I see you." Adrian realized that his journey was complete. He had started as a man who needed to control everything to feel secure. He was now a father who could release control to ensure his daughter's freedom. His greatest success was not the billions he made, but the unconditional trust he had finally earned from the one person whose life he was meant to protect, not control. He was ready for her to fly, knowing that the foundation they had built would always bring her home. Chapter 8. The Noise and the Silence. The Phoenix Wing Gala, a decade of irrelevance. The annual Phoenix Wing Gala in New York City was the highlight of the Herrera family's calendar. It was a celebration of empowerment, a night where Ellie and Mateo stood as twin beacons of success, surrounded by their 4 magnificent children. Clara, having happily committed to RISD, introduced her siblings, James, Lucia, and Miguel, to donors with a calm, articulate confidence that made Adrian immensely proud. As Adrian surveyed the ballroom, now a powerful executive and dedicated father, he caught the eye of Marina Rossi, who was holding court nearby. Marina, still Sophia's fierce advocate, raised her champagne flute in a silent toast, a gesture that conveyed, "We won." Later, in a quiet corner, Adrian and Marina spoke. "Your foundation is doing incredible work, Adrian," Marina said. "You've successfully managed to separate the personal story from the professional mission." "Ellie built the mission, Marina. I just provide the infrastructure. I learned a long time ago not to try and control her vision." Marina leaned in. "Speaking of lack of control, I heard a whisper from London yesterday. Alexander Vance." Adrian felt a flicker, not of anger, but of remote curiosity. "He's still a footnote? Worse. He's a ghost. He was apparently let go from his sales job. He's struggling to secure work because the old baby shower scandal keeps popping up in background checks. Not the crime, but the sheer calculating cruelty of the act. He tried to sue Victoria for more access to his son, but his financial disclosure was a mess. He's completely unmoored." Marina looked directly at Adrian. "The man who threw you out because you were defective is now financially and socially defective. Do you feel anything?" Adrian took a slow breath, surveying the room, the warmth, the laughter, the undeniable sense of belonging. "I feel quiet, Marina. I feel silence." He explained. He fills his world with noise. The noise of self-pity, the noise of blame, the noise of trying to rebuild his broken image. We chose silence, the silence of deep, unconditional trust, the silence of a home that doesn't need to shout its worth. The contrast of legacies. The contrast was stark. Alexander was drowning in the consequences of his noise, while the Herreras were thriving in their silence. That night, Adrian had a profound, quiet conversation with Clara. She was looking forward to leaving for university, but Adrian could sense her apprehension about the financial disparity between her and her fellow art students. "Dad," she asked softly, "if I choose a creative career, will I ever make a real impact? I feel like I should be doing something bigger, more concrete, more Adrian thought of Alexander, who had only ever chased concrete success and ended up with nothing. "Clara," Adrian said, placing his hand gently on her shoulder. "Your mother's greatest impact was not the money she made. It was her choice to redefine her worth. Your creative vision is not about money. It's about making people feel something. That is the deepest form of impact." He pulled out his phone and showed her the front page of the Phoenix Wing website, a powerful quote from Ellie about redefining success. "Alexander Vance tried to tell your mother she was broken because she didn't fit his mold. You have the chance to reject all molds. Your legacy won't be in the numbers you create, but in the beauty you design. Go to RISD, create beautiful noise, and trust that we will always be here in the silence." Meaningful ending. The end of the echo. Weeks later, Adrian and Ellie drove Clara to Rhode Island. Watching her walk confidently into her dorm room, surrounded by her sketchbooks and her dreams, Adrian felt a peace that transcended all of any professional achievement. As they drove away, Ellie squeezed Adrian's hand. "The moment you stopped looking for him to apologize, Adrian, you won your last battle." Adrian nodded, looking ahead at the open road. He realized Alexander Vance was finally, truly, gone from his emotional landscape. He had faded from a villain to a memory. From a memory to a whisper. And now, from a whisper to nothing at all. The ultimate victory wasn't the confrontation, the wealth, or the foundation. It was the simple, profound realization that he and Ellie had built a life so rich in trust and happiness that their abuser's ruin, and even his very existence, had become utterly, beautifully irrelevant. Their story was no longer about escaping the past. It was about embracing the extraordinary future they had consciously and consistently chosen. Chapter 9. The Global Infrastructure of Grace. The Merger of Heart and Capital. 4 years after the official founding of the Phoenix Wing Foundation, the organization had moved beyond national borders. Ellie and Adrian weren't just running a business. They were managing a global infrastructure of emotional and financial recovery. Ellie, 49, with her background in nursing and deep empathy, served as the global director of programs, setting the ethical and psychological framework. Adrian, 53, the master of logistics and capital, served as the chairman of the board and chief strategist, ensuring the foundation's expansion was efficient, sustainable, and financially impenetrable. Their partnership was a beautiful, powerful merger of heart and capital. Their latest challenge was launching a major initiative in Geneva, focusing on women caught in the manipulative web of high-net-worth divorce cases across Europe, situations chillingly similar to Ellie's own. "We need to streamline the vetting process for the European grants," Adrian told Ellie one evening, reviewing a complex organizational chart in their home office. "If we deploy the capital incorrectly, we risk mission creep." "It's not just about capital, Adrian," Ellie countered gently, but firmly. "It's about vulnerability management. These women are experts at hiding their pain because they were taught that exposing weakness is dangerous. The vetting can't be purely analytical. It has to be layered with grace." Adrian leaned back, accepting the correction. "Right. The grace layer. The framework I failed to apply to my own life. So, how do we scale grace?" Ellie smiled, a warm, knowing light in her eyes. "We use our story. We ensure every Phoenix Wing counselor is trained not just in finance, but in recognizing the language of gaslighting and control, the tactics that Alexander mastered. We turn his blueprint for destruction into our blueprint for recovery. The ultimate metric: indifference." A few months later, Adrian and Ellie were in Geneva for the official launch. The press conference was packed with European media, eager to hear about the new American philanthropic model. During the Q&A session, a sharp-witted reporter from a financial paper addressed Adrian. "Mr. Herrera, your personal story is public knowledge. Your former life was about aggressive control. Now your foundation is about empowerment and freedom. How do you, personally, reconcile that massive ethical shift?" The question was direct, laced with skepticism. Adrian didn't flinch. He didn't revert to corporate jargon. He responded with the quiet, earned wisdom of a man who had changed. "My previous life was based on the belief that external control guaranteed internal stability," Adrian stated clearly. "I was wrong. That path led to self-destruction. The Phoenix Wing is an expression of my new truth. True stability comes from internal freedom. Our mission is to give women the infrastructure to achieve that freedom." "But is there any sense of retribution?" the reporter pushed. "Is this foundation, in some way, an ongoing punishment for your former life?" Ellie stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on Adrian's back. But Adrian answered. "No," he said, the word ringing with finality. "Retribution requires emotional energy. We reserve all our energy for building, not destroying. The ultimate metric of our success is the moment when a woman realizes her abuser, and the life he tried to impose on her has become irrelevant to her happiness." My own journey ended not when Alexander Vance failed, but when I truly stopped caring about his existence. That is the freedom we sell. It is the end of the echo. Meaningful ending. The enduring partnership. Returning to their hotel suite late that evening, Ellie and Adrian sat on the balcony overlooking Lake Geneva. "You handled that beautifully," Ellie said, raising her glass. "The end of the echo. That summarizes everything we learned." "It's the only honest answer," Adrian replied, clinking his glass against hers. "I learned the hard way that every relationship I cherish, with you, with Clara, with James, Lucia and Miguel, requires me to surrender the illusion of control. It requires continuous, active faith. And that faith, that vulnerability, is your greatest strength now," Ellie affirmed. Adrian reached for her hand, his eyes reflecting the soft glow of the city lights. He had once believed he was creating a financial legacy that would last forever. He now knew his true, enduring legacy was this: a life built not on the fragile, temporary foundation of fear and control, but on the unshakable, permanent bedrock of trust and unconditional love. He was the infrastructure, and Ellie was the grace. Together, they were building something that transcended architecture, finance, or even revenge. They were building hope on a global scale.